Hello and welcome back to the Dante in a Year podcast. Let's continue with Dante's Paradiso, Canto XII. As soon as the blessed flame had raised itself to speak its final word, the sacred mill commenced to turn, and it had not all wheeled in its gyre before another of the circles closed it, and met it motion for motion and song for song. Song that excelled our muses, our sirens in those sweet trumpets, as a first splendor excels what's reflected. As two bows, parallel and like in color, course through tenebrous clouds, when Juno commands her handmaid, bearing that without of what's within, in the guise of the talk of that vagrant whom love consumes as the sun does vapors, and make the people here presage through the pact God fixed with Noah that the world would never again know his deluge. Thus the two garlands of those sempiternal roses encircled us about, and so the extreme responded to the intimate. When the jubilation and the other grand festival, so much song and so much blazing flame, light blended with trembling light, quieted together at a point and with one will, just as the eyes, moved with what pleases them, must close and open together, from the heart of one of the new lights moved a voice that made me seem a needle to a star in turning to where it was. And it commenced, "The love that makes me beautiful draws me to reason of the other leader for whom my tale's been so well told. It's fitting that, where the one is, the other's introduced, so that, as those united in war, their glory should light them together. The army of Christ, so costly to rearm, moved slowly after the ensign, suspicious and scattered. When the emperor who ever reigns provided for his army, which was in doubt, through grace above, not for any worth, and, as we said, succored his spouse with two champions, in whose deeds, in whose speech, the scattered people were gathered again. In that place where the sweet zephyr swells to spread the new fronds of which Europe sees herself dressed again, not very far from the breaking of the waves, beyond which, for the long flight, the sun sometimes absconds from every man, sits fortunate Calaroga, beneath the protection of the grand shield, in which the lion both subjects and is subjected. Within it was born the amorous lover of the Christian faith, the holy athlete, gentle to his people and cruel to enemies. And as it was created, his mind was so replete of living power that in his mother he made her a prophet. After the espousal between him and the faith was completed at the sacred font, where each gave of the other's health, the lady who gave the assent for his saw in sleep the miraculous fruit that would issue from his and her heir. And so that he might be as he was created, indeed, a spirit moved itself to name him of the possessive of his he all was. He was called Dominic, and I speak of him just as of the gardener whom Christ elected for the care of his orchard. Truly he seemed Christ's messenger and familiar, because the first love that was manifest in him was for the first counsel Christ gave. Oftentimes he was found on the ground silent and awakened by his nurse, as if he'd said, "I have come for this." Oh, his father was truly Felix. Oh, his mother was surely Giovanna, if, interpreted, it means what's said. Not for the world, for which they weary themselves a moment following after the Ostian and Taddeo, but for love of the true manna. In a little time he was made a great doctor, so that he set himself to circle the vineyard, which blanches so swiftly if the vintner is vile. And to the seat that then was more benign to the just poor, malignant not in himself but in the one who sits, he came calling not to dispense with 2 or 3 for 6, not for the fortune of the first vacancy, not for the decimas quae sunt pauperum Dei, but for license to combat the errant world, for the seed of the 24 plants that wreathe you now. Then, with doctrine and sound will, with the apostolic office, he set off as a torrent that springs from a high vein, and his plummeting thundered among the heretical tongues, most lively there where the resistance was thickest. From him rose several rivulets whereby the Catholic orchard's irrigated, such that its little shoots are more vivid. If such was the one wheel of the ring in which the Holy Church defended herself and conquered the brigands in their camp, The excellence of the other, of whom Thomas was so courteous before my coming, ought well be plain to you. But the orbit that forms the supreme part of its circumference is derelict, such that there's mold where the crust was. His family, which moved itself straight with its feet in his tracks, is so turned that what was before them now lies behind. And soon one will watch the gathering of the ill planting, when the ears will lament that the ark has taken them. Truly I say, whoever would search our volume, folio to folio, would yet find a page where he'd read, I am that which once I was. But it will not be from Casale nor from Acquasparta, there where such come to the scripture as would flee from it or coerce it. I am the life of Bonaventure of Bagnoregio, who in grand offices ever postponed the left-hand care. Illuminato and Augustine are here, who are of the first discalced poor brothers, who were made friends to God in the habit. Hugh of St. Victor is here with them, and Peter the bookworm, and Peter of Spain, he who lights the world below in 12 books. Nathan the prophet, and the metropolitan Chrysostom and Anselm, and that Donatus, who deigned to put his hand to the first art. Rabanus is here, and lighting me alongside, the Calabrian abbot Joachim, endowed of the prophetic spirit. The inflamed courtesy and the discreet tongue of Brother Thomas moved me to invoke such a champion, and it moved this company with me. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Dante in a Year podcast. See you next time for Dante's Paradiso, Canto 13.